Hey, what's up, good people? It's Jay Ray, the co host of Q Points, and I wanted to come to you because there are two really important ways that you can support our show. One is by subscribing to it wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. Q Points is pretty much everywhere. The other thing that you can do is you can visit us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and on Podchaser, and you can leave us a star rating. Please rate us 5 stars because you know you love Q Points. And on Apple Podcasts and on Podchaser, you can actually leave us a written review. It's not required, but it really does help to spread the word about the show, and it helps people to discover it as they're looking for new podcasts to listen to. We're always appreciative of you supporting Q Points. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us so far, and enjoy the show. Thanks for tuning into Q Points. Before you take in this show, we want to acknowledge that neither DJ Sir Daniel or Jay Ray take lightly the stories of homophobic behavior that have been recounted about Bad Brains in the past in any way, shape, or form. As members of the LGBTQ plus community, we condemn any statements or acts of hatred against our and any community. This show is meant as an examination of the band's landmark debut and nothing more. Thank you and enjoy the show.
Yes, hello and welcome back to another episode of Q Points. I am DJ Sir Daniel.
And my name is Jay Ray, also known by my government as Johnny Ray Cornegay III. What's happening, y'all?
Listen, welcome to Q Points, your safe space for conversation and just love for all things Black music and Black creatives. You want to talk about it? We talk about it here on Q Points. And Jay Ray, I'm excited about this conversation because again, I'm coming as just a curiosity because I don't claim to know everything about all music underneath the Black music umbrella, and this is a much needed conversation.
Absolutely. Like, I'm really looking forward to really having this dialogue, man, and diving into the history of this really important record. This band, this was a seminal release. And so I'm happy that we come to get to do this. And I'm going to be honest. So, Sir Daniel, I am a fan. I'm coming to this. So I'm going to be speaking to everybody as well from just like a fan of punk, a fan of Bad Brains, and bringing that energy to this. So I ain't no expert. So if there's anybody watching this, like, you didn't talk about that's not what we're here to do. We're here to celebrate the work. Okay. So I'm a fan too.
Absolutely. And as usual, the way we start every show is we want to acknowledge. First of all, we want to acknowledge you for tuning in each and every week because we're up to show 38, J Ray. That's a lot of our gums flapping every single week and
There's a
coming up with
lot.
different conversations.
Yeah, there's a lot to talk about. And so it was funny. I just put up on the screen. So K Maxwell, hey there, how you doing? Kipper, hey there, how you doing? And Kipper is like, hey fellas, great topic. Hashtag Black Rock. Let's just keep it move. We got to keep it going and not be afraid to dive in. We talk about Black music, and that means all of it right here. 38 shows.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. What's up today? Might be taping. We see you in the building as well. 38 shows, and we are talking about everything, including funk, rock, music, and we cannot go any further without acknowledging the passing of the grande dame, the mistress of all things funk and rock and roll, Betty Davis. She passed away at the age of 85. Am I correct?
Oh no, I think it was 70. She was in her 70s. I don't want to quote it and get it wrong, but yeah, she wasn't quite 85 yet. So we'll look it up and get it right.
Yes. As a matter of fact, I believe it. No, 77. I apologize. 77.
Mhm.
Listen, we wouldn't even be talking about Bad Brains tonight if it weren't for people in the vein of a Betty Davis, people in the vein of Sly
Mm-hmm.
and the Family Stone. And then, fast forward to the 90s, we have Joy.
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, it just continues. We have such a huge family tree, and she was definitely at the root of it. And we salute you, Betty Davis.
Absolutely. We did, for those of you who are newer to the show, back in, I think, August, we did a show that honored Betty's legacy
Mm-hmm.
because we really wanted to dive into that. So if you don't know Betty Davis, just go to your streaming platform, right? And type in the following words: "If I'm in luck, I might get picked up," and just press play on it. Just press play on it.
If I may add, type in "get back there," "get back there" in socket. Yes, you'll thank me later. Thank me later, because that's my jam.
Right.
That's yeah. So we just gonna leave it at that. Thank you very much, Betty Davis. We
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you what you gave to us, and fly on in paradise.
Absolutely, absolutely. And also, this week we also lost Syl Johnson, just another towering figure in soul music. This man has been sampled so many times. Every time you hear, that ain't James
Yep.
Brown. That's Syl
Nope.
Johnson.
That is Syl Johnson, and so a lot of people are finding out that Syl Johnson is Selena Johnson's father.
Mm-hmm.
And if you listen to Syl Johnson sing and listen to Selena,
Yep.
it's the same exact voice. It is the same exact voice. She earned those vocal cords honest. And yes, we have to give it up to him and thank him for his contributions as well to this thing we call black music.
Absolutely, man. We do this, every time. It seems like every show, Sir Daniel, we've had to say goodbye, but that's why I'm also glad that we do this every week, because we do
Yes.
get a chance to speak those names. And for those folks who are listening who may not know who they are, now you got some folks that you can go back and run their stream numbers up, because they families going, them families in them estates need that coin. So go ahead and run up them streams.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So shall we dive into some bad brains? Shall we? No. Shall we crowd dive? How about that?
We are going to stage dive
Yes.
into this. Oh, okay. So Sir Daniel, so I'm going to walk us. I got a question for you, but before I get there, I want to kind of do a walk through history really quick, because I do think it is important that we highlight some things in history that got us to Bad Brains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to start there with Rocket 88. So Rocket 88, that's Ike Turner. For those of you who don't know, it wasn't credited to him actually when it was released, but Rocket 88 is considered to be the first recorded rock and roll record. And you have this incredible energy, this killer guitar over this track, and it's new, right, when it is released. And stuff like Rocket 88 got us into the 1960s. And I actually did a black music mixtape about this particular song, but Bunker Hill's The Girl Can't Dance. So Bunker Hill was the alias of David Walker, who was singing at the same time he was singing for the Mighty Clouds of Joy.
I love these double lives.
You know what I'm saying? So
performance delivery.
Right. So he couldn't actually say, hey, I'm doing this, because when you were doing gospel music back then, and I know Kipper can speak to this, when you were doing gospel music back then, you better not be doing no secular music. That is not what you can do. So The Girl Can't Dance is actually considered a proto-punk record. It is in the canon of songs that began to create this other sound. So it took rock and roll and it twisted it and distorted it, but also stripped away a lot of things, right? And The Girl Can't Dance is one of those songs. So absolutely go and check it out, which gets us into the early 70s and Death. The world, we didn't learn about Death's contribution really until the 2000s. where
he means the band
the band
Death.
Death, right? There's a band called Death. A band called Death is the title of the documentary. Go check it out.
Mhm.
But in the early 1970s, these three brothers, black men from Detroit, recorded what is also considered that early punk, like really early punk music. Black men in Detroit, right? Recorded this album that sat in an attic for 30 years before it was discovered, right? By the son, by the
Wow.
son of one of the members. So why do I want to bring us all through this, right? Because we have always been part of the rock and punk conversation. I'm not even getting into bands like from Philly, like Pure Hell and like some of these other folks. We have always been part of this conversation, right? So, and we'll talk more about fe- black folks' feelings about punk a little bit later.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get us to that point. Before we jump into Bad Brains, though, I watched something really dope, Sir Daniel. There's a new film out called Polystyrene.
Yeah.
I am a cliche. Watch this documentary, y'all. So Polystyrene, black woman from the UK,
Mhm.
was the lead of a band called X-Ray Specs in the late 1970s. And yo, this band was killing. And this woman was out front fronting this punk outfit, right? And owning it and owning her power. And this documentary recounts her story. So even as we get to Bad Brains, because now we're here now, because we're in the late 1970s,
Mhm.
it is important, once again, we were part of this conversation, but check out that polystyrene. Have you seen it yet, the polystyrene doc, Sir Daniel?
I haven't seen the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching some music videos of X-Ray Specs, and the energy is just there. It's infectious. It's like I want to know more about polystyrene,
Mm-hmm.
definitely, and you will too. You have to check her out. It just goes to show there are so many unsung heroes in this what we call black music. It's ridiculous, but that's what we're here to bring it to you front and center, so you know more about it.
Yes. But now we are here at Bad Brains. And so before we jump into the band, so Sir Daniel,
Yes.
what were your thoughts on punk growing up?
So I okay. So I am part of this big movement, this migration of Black West Indians to the United States in the late '70s, early '80s, and a huge section of us um, were our were our 7 Day Adventists, right? So you're talking about a black kid being raised by a single parent
Mm-hmm.
who is raising her child 7 Day Adventist. And one thing about 7 Day Adventists is they have these very strict views on how you should look, how you should present yourself, and what you should be listening to. And punk music and any kind of rock music at an early age, I was told, is satanic, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I got that message very early, that it was not something to be entertained, that those people are to be feared. And so then what I would see, I remember specifically staying up late and watching SNL and seeing, performers like the Ramones
Mm-hmm.
and Blondie come and being like, oh, I should be afraid of these people because of what is being taught by my church. And so yeah, so that was my early impression. I just distinctly remember being afraid of that aesthetic because in the '80s we're talking like real punk. We're talking people with severe piercings,
Mm-hmm.
the spiked hair.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in the United States, I think, was being influenced by the UK
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic of punk, which is
Mm-hmm.
very Sid and Nancy,
Mm-hmm.
spiked hair,
Mm-hmm.
all of that stuff. I will say, by the age of this is really weird, but in thinking about this conversation, I just remember. Okay, y'all are gonna make fun of me, But when I saw in '85, when the cartoon Gem and the Holograms came to, came to network television, I just remember not being so afraid anymore because of the way they presented themselves, especially the Misfits.
Right.
And if you know me to this day, I like the Misfits better.
I
Anyway,
mean, we all do.
I mean, their songs are better. They are the Misfits. But anyway, so we're talking about that aesthetic. It sounds really trivial and trite, but that helps to kind of calm me down and be like, oh, they're not so bad. I like the storyline. I like the melody that is attached to these songs, because a lot of because a lot of the songs, a lot of punk songs don't necessarily have a melody that I could remember or I could relate to and sing along to. So that's why it never stuck with me. But just going on even further, that whole conversation about punk rock and rock in general not being a black thing was also huge in my coming up, my growing up and listening to music. So I think that's part of why I stayed away or was not intrigued enough to listen to a lot of punk rock until I got older. And you hear things like commercial songs like The Knack and the Ramones,
Mm-hmm.
hey, oh, let's go. And
Right.
before you know, you're jumping around and listening to that song and you enjoy it. But yeah, that's just it's just that conditioning growing up black in the black church and that you get around this conversation.
Absolutely. And I think, it was interesting for me because I actually had to sit with, as I went back and was revisiting this record, I actually was trying to recall, like, oh crap, like when did I first hear this record? Because it certainly wasn't in 1982. Because
No.
when this album was released, it was released on a cassette. It's sometimes referred to as the yellow tape because it apparently came on a yellow tape, and it was
Mm-hmm.
released on a cassette. And this would not have been something that would have been near my parents' purview in order for it to fall into my lap, right? One, they were from DC, so music was very regional at that point, right? So this was,
Mm-hmm.
a DC band. Um, and so I had to sit back and I was like, oh shoot, I think I didn't get into Bad Brains until like the Rise album, which is like their fifth or sixth record, and they were then on a major. And what's funny about that is it's not their finest. It's not considered one of their best records, but
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't because I was from the MTV generation. Like, we both grew up in that era. That was how I got introduced to a lot of punk. I got introduced to, and I didn't even know it was punk then, right? So we talked same bands. We're talking about Blondie. We're talking about the Talking Heads. We're talking about the Ramones. Um, if you want to get real glossy, we're talking about Billy Idol.
Yeah.
Baby, give me some White Wedding any day, right? So,
Even the Go Go's, like
oh
early
my
Go
God.
Go's,
Oh, I had
you'd be
actually had the
surprised.
Go-Go's record. Yes. Beauty and the Beat. I had that record.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
for me, coming and figuring out, finding this record, right? And sitting in, when I finally heard this album, I was like, oh shoot, like black people can do that? And it had been done. This is years in. This is probably a full decade in because I think the Rise record came out like 93. So this happened like a full decade before, right? And then I'm discovering as a high schooler, like, oh, there's like other options for
Yeah.
me, you
Yeah.
know? So, real quick, before we start diving into a few songs from the album that we wanted to highlight. So, Bad Brains is a band from DC, point blank period. They from DC. Um, their lineup, the classic lineup. So HR as the lead singer, Dr. No on guitar, not that's a bass. Daryl Jennifer was on bass, and then Earl Hudson. So HR and Earl are brothers. So Earl was on drums. Um, and so apparently, and I didn't know this. So in researching for this particular show, they actually started as like a jazz fusion band. See,
Ain't that something?
ain't that something? Called Mind Power. And this comes up. So this idea of mind power and attitude come up in this record, right? But yeah, they started as like a jazz fusion band, and were banned from playing at certain clubs in DC. They end up talking about that, on the album as well. So it's these four brothers from DC who play really fast. Sir Daniel, did you hear how fast them songs were?
Listen, the album is over in 30 minutes. The whole album, and there's about 300 songs on the album, and it's done in 30 minutes. I'm slightly exaggerating, but to your point about them being a jazz fusion band makes a lot of sense because in listening to each of the way the songs are structured, one song feels like three different songs. And
Yep.
you can do a lot of that in jazz with the improv and improvising and fusing in different elements. But that influence can still be heard in to this day in non-punk rock forms. If you look at what Missy and Timbaland did,
Mm-hmm.
reintroducing like splitting a song in half,
Yep.
you getting two different songs. That's part of their influence. That's
Yeah,
part of the Bad Brains influence.
absolutely. Like, so when you think about one of the things in considering how fast that they were playing, to Sir Daniel's point, right? These songs, and they over quick. You got a minute, and you're gonna get a lot in this minute. We're about to talk about lyrically what's happening, right? You not only have that, you have this instrumentation, and then you have this kind of dynamic front person who, from all accounts, I've never seen Bad Brains live, in particular in their heyday. We put up a picture on Instagram today when it seems like he's like 6 feet in the air. Like he
Yeah.
is literally, the mic is falling out of his hand. I'm sure he caught it, or he might not have, his punk, but he is off the ground. So you figure they are playing these songs real quick. You have this front person who is incredibly active and engaged with the crowd. And so what's dope about this album, for me, is that I feel like even though I haven't seen them live, I have seen them live, right? Because I feel like the live energy, and that's rare, where live
Yeah.
energy translates into a record. I feel like this record captures that perfectly.
Mm.
So I want to talk about some of these songs. I have four of them that I want to do a quick chat about, as we get into that, and I want to read folks some lyrics. So Daniel, we gonna rap about this. So, sailing on,
Certainly.
first song on the record, sailing on, right? So here's what here's what HR is actually saying, y'all. So, pull up the lyrics when you listen to this record, and I think it'll help. So he is saying, "You don't want me anymore, so I'll just walk right out that door. Played the game right from the start. I trust you, you use me. Now my heart's all torn apart."
So I'm sailing. Yeah, I'm
So
sailing on.
I'm sailing on. That is that's a beautiful lyric.
It's a sad lyric.
Yeah.
It's, he's definitely heartbroken,
Yes.
and I think what we get from Bad Brains is we see that this is the music of the youth, and a lot of, to your point about the speed in which it's played, says a lot about where we are in our adolescence. And
Hmm.
when I say adolescence, I'm talking about even up to the age of 25, because you still your frontal lobe still isn't completely formed at that point. So there's still some physiological developing that you're doing. And so I think what punk did, it allowed for an outlet for a lot of rage and for an expression of feelings, even if you didn't know, to your point about this person being heartbroken. But this was the only way he saw fit to express it in this. And when I tell you it's thrashing, it's you wouldn't be able to tell that this was a love song or somebody that's heartbroken because of the way it's presented.
Yep.
But it makes a lot of sense, based on their age and the type of music that, it's the music of the youth. It's music of the youth and how they express themselves.
Yeah, and also being able to take lyrics like this and put them into, because I was actually fascinated when I went and pulled the lyrics. That's why the internet is an amazing thing, because I was like, okay, I kind of know what this song is about, but let me like read it.
Mm-hmm.
And when I read it, I was just like, ooh, ooh. And how did you get this into that? But you just described it perfectly, where you're able to kind of take all this stuff that's happening inside and churn it. And this is the way they're going to deliver it. So interesting thing about this song is No Doubt covered this in like
Mm.
96. It wasn't on a record. There's like a B-side where they covered this, and they actually did it live on MTV. That is available. So if folks want to see the No Doubt version of Bad Brains is Sailing On, you can find it. It's on YouTube.
And that was when John Spence was singing lead? Because
Um, no, no. No. Gwen Stefani was there.
okay.
Gwen Stefani was on leads, and I only watched part of the performance. I was actually curious. I was like, I didn't know that they covered this, but they did
Mm-hmm.
it at one of those MTV, like the spring break things that they
Okay.
used to do. So it was done there. So yeah, you can see Gwen Stefani doing this song in completely energetic, No Doubt fashion if you want to check it out. Next song, Attitude. So we talked about the first band was called Mind Power, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Attitude is like 1 minute long and it repeats the same thing. So here's the lyric. Don't care what they may say, we got that attitude. Don't care what you may do, we got that attitude. Hey, we got that PMA. So PMA, I had to look this up, stands for positive mental attitude. So HR at some point read Think and Grow Rich.
Isn't that
Right.
something? Wow. Who knew?
Who knew? And this idea of having a positive mental attitude so that you can prosper is what this band stood for. So that is in the DNA of the group, is this idea of us having a positive mental attitude and being different than what punk was doing at the time, not trying to be dark.
Yeah. That speaks to. Remember last week when we were talking about music from the Afro Latin
Mm-hmm.
experience and how music was used in religious aspects to usher in the spirits and whatnot. And part of that is in repetition.
Mm-hmm.
The repetition of the drum, repetition of the lyric. That's translated into PMA. We
Mm-hmm.
got that PMA. We've got that PMA. Imagine saying that over and over and over. It's part of, and with them being also dabbling in ska and reggae
Mm-hmm.
music,
Mm-hmm.
and word sound power, which is a big part of the reggae movement, it makes a lot of sense that they are carrying on that tradition of putting a message in the music that you probably don't. The medicine is hidden in the sugar or what in the candy, So
And you hit the nail on the head, because one of the things that I was sitting with, and let me do a quick thing too. Shout out to Reggie's Expressions. What's happening? Reggie, thanks a lot for joining us. And Kipper, and I just put that up, said, wow, literary influences in songwriting is intriguing to me.
mm-hmm.
Um, I was trying to figure out why I felt so endeared to the album. And
Mm,
reading the lyrics actually made it make sense. So when you just talked about channeling of the spirits, them putting these messages in the music, yeah, you feel connected to this band because they, to your point, are feeding you these positive affirmations. It's just coming to you through punk.
who knew that you could get positive affirmations while moshing?
Right. Couple more songs. So, um, as we talked about, Bad Brains is a band from DC. So this is banned in DC. They did a song called Band in, they're a band from DC, right? But they were banned in DC because of, right, because of the clubs or the types of crowds that these young people are bringing here, or no. Remember we talked about in our very first show when DC banned hip hop.
Yes. Yes.
So
Same thing.
same thing. So this is a decade prior, right, where you have a band local to that area that was banned from playing in many clubs in the area. So here's the lyrics. Banned in DC with 1,000 more places to go. Gonna swim across the Atlantic because that's the only place I can go. You can't hurt me. Why? I'm banned in DC. We got ourselves. Gonna sing it, gonna love it, gonna work it out to any length. Don't worry, no worry about what the people say. We got ourselves. We're gonna make it anyway.
Again, I can see why it's endearing. It's very endearing. It's very aspirational, and while at the same time being rebellious. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at the album art,
Mm-hmm.
which of course has the Capitol
Yep.
being struck by red, gold, and green
Yep.
lightning, and being set on fire. And if you know about the red, gold, and green dreams, then again we're harkening back to their reggae influence. So
Yeah.
it's a there's a lot of different layers that we're peeling back here. I see what you're doing, J Ray. I'm here for it. I'm here for it, and because you're teaching me at the same time, so I appreciate that.
No, no problem. And thank you, because this is learning. I was so happy to dive into this in this way. And we're lastly ending with one of the reggae tracks on the record. I love Ija, so which is the last track on the record. And what I loved about this is this second verse. Um, my lovely sister judge me by my clothes, yeah, only to learn her mistake. Not everyone's alike. We're not all uptight. No fuss, no fight. Cool that way. Let me tell you about cool that way. Right?
Hmm.
So, once again, recognizing that they are walking a different path. This is HR, of course, so as the lyric writer, walking a different path, recognizing he's walking this path, and like, all right, well, you know, folks gonna learn. I'm not doing this like everyone else.
And when you think about, first of all, being in DC in the early '80s as black men, so we're in the depths of Reaganomics, or the very beginning of Reaganomics.
Mhm.
DC is gaining the the reputation of being starting to become dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the '80s. Everything is about being upwardly mobile,
Mm-hmm.
and the super rich, and all of that being flashed on television. And then you have like people who are the trickle down effect. We have people that have a lot of money, and then you have a lot of people that are super poor.
Right.
And so I can only imagine being black men doing this kind of music in that atmosphere where hip hop is starting
Mm-hmm.
to bubble, and they're still trying to look. This is how we look. This is how we're presenting ourselves. We're not polo down or all that
Mm-hmm.
other stuff that everybody else is doing. So there's a lot of context. And
Mm-hmm.
I just have to say, just upon listening to this album, I was thoroughly impressed by the dexterity of their musical tastes. Like you said, to go from Scott reggae to like super thrashing hard heavy metal, it's just a lot on this album and it can be appreciated by people who have various tastes in music. So I
Yeah.
was thoroughly impressed by it. So I appreciate you for putting me on to Bad Brains.
No doubt. And so y'all definitely go and peep. If you haven't heard it before, go and check out Bad Brains' debut album. It is 40 and was really important. You had these black men. This band is often regarded as the most important punk band to exist. They've
Hmm.
been called the hardest band, the most important band. And this was the record that made their mark on the world. And so it's definitely worth checking out. Sir Daniel, I'm about to put this picture up. I'm going to have to describe it for those folks that are listening to the show. But I
Yeah.
want y'all to see this. So, for everybody who is listening to the show right now, I want y'all to chime in because, 1979.
Wow.
So, here's what's on the screen. You have a sea of young black children. It's a black and white photo, a sea of young black children. And you have HR with a button down shirt and a leather belt and some chains around. But he's got the microphone in hand and he's mid mosh on stage, right? And my favorite thing, Sir Daniel, I'm going to put this up here. My favorite thing are these two people. Okay. There's a little
They're,
girl
yes.
who we're pointing at first, right? There's this little girl who is enthralled. Like, her face is like, I want more of whatever's happening in front of me right now. Okay. And there's this other brother off to the right who is like, I don't know what's happening right now, but I'm kind of into it, but I don't think I should be into it. Uh,
It's a serious side eye.
it's a serious side eye. So, let me tell you where this came from, by the way. So, real quick, y'all. So, Bad Brains, so HR decided that he wanted to bring punk into the community. So, we got some people chiming in. So Trey is like, that little girl was with it. She
Yes.
absolutely was, Trey. K Maxwell is like, love this, mesmerized, right? So what happened in that photo, real quick, was that September 9th, 1979, HR, who's the lead singer of Bad Brains, was like, we're going to do a show in the Valley Green Housing Project. We're going to bring this show into here. So in his mind, it was aligning with the UK punk movement and they were doing these rock against racism
Mm.
shows. So what he decided to do was do this over here. So in 1979. So they just set up the show in the middle of the complex and performed. So what you were actually watching was the young people who live there like take it in, and that was fascinating to me.
Imagine a whole band setting up in the middle of your hood, your
Mhm.
home, and it's nothing you've heard before, but it's free and it's music. I can only imagine the pandemonium that caused in that neighborhood, and I would really love to know where that girl is
I
right
want to
now.
know. Me too.
Right,
So, if anybody watches this show or is listening to this show and knows where that little girl is, did she start a band? Like, where is she right now?
like she looks like she became some like she's on a stage somewhere. I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. But I love these tidbits. Listen, you did your research, homie, on this one. I kudos to you on pulling up this because this is super interesting and I love it. I love it because why? This is ours, y'all. It's all ours. It's I don't know how else to put it. We touch
Listen,
that. We have a hand in everything.
every single thing, like, and that's what we love that we can give that here at Q Points. I'm actually dropping in the chat right now, dropping the article for that picture, so y'all can see the picture too. For those of you, it'll be in the description. But yeah, this is all our stuff, man. Like we talked about, we went all the way back to Rocket 88 and what Ike Turner was doing and moved, and we just decided to stop at 1982 with Bad Brains' debut tape, the yellow tape. And this is all ours. There is a through line through all of American music, all of the world music that includes us. And that's what we're here to talk about on Q Points, man. So I'm glad that we got to celebrate this record. Yeah, this means a lot.
Happy birthday, Bad Brains. Happy 40th.
Happy 40th.
Welcome to the 40 Club.
Right. So check this out, Sir Daniel. You got a gig coming up, don't you?
Yeah, tomorrow night at Best End Brewery here in Atlanta. It's the 1 year anniversary of Thank God It's Vinyl, put on by DJ Johnny Normal. You know, shout out to him. He has assembled a super group of vinyl DJs in the Atlanta area, and we just come and we just have a good time. It's anything goes. It's open formats. People play what's on their heart. I'll be reunited with some of the members of the Wax Fundamentals crew, including Bruce Phillips, who you got to meet last week, and I'm just excited about it. I'm gonna play a little. I like to take people through some changes when I play, so I'm gonna start off one way and it's gonna end one another way, and you're gonna be like, "How did we get from there to there?" But don't worry about that. You'll enjoy it. You'll have a great time. It's absolutely free. It's a Best End brewery, so they've got drinks. There's gonna be food. They even have a independent midnight market, and JB's Record Lounge is gonna be there doing a vinyl pop up. So it's a great way to spend a Friday night. So if you are in the Metro Atlanta area, please come on out and say hi. Come up and say hi to me and say, "Hey, I saw you. I recognize you from Q Points. Came here to
Ooh,
play you. Hear you play."
that's dope. So listen, y'all, a couple of things that y'all can do. So you can definitely keep up with us by becoming a Q Points insider. And you're very welcome. Thank you, K Maxwell. You can become a Q Points insider on our website. So make sure that you check it out there. The link is in the description or it is in the chat for those of you that are joining us live. You can subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts. Also, you can leave us a review over there. We'd really appreciate it. You can also leave us a review over at Podchaser. We'd appreciate that too. And for those folks who have not done so, you can subscribe to us on YouTube. So if you're watching us on YouTube, just hit the subscribe button, hit the bell. It's a whole thing. It's real easy. You already right there. So just subscribe and you will get updates on all things Q Points. And if you're watching us anywhere else, go on over to YouTube and subscribe to us. So yeah.
You know what I got tonight before we got on the show,
What?
J Ray? I got a text. And you know what the text said?
What did it say?
The text said in 1 hour, Q Points honors the 40th anniversary of Black Punk Legends Bad Brains debut album. Join us at 8:30 p.m. I got a text from us, and you know how you can get text from us. You can get it by scanning that QR code that is on your screen right now. I know you're probably saying, "Wow, these guys are OD." No, we just want you to. We don't want you to have any excuse to not be a part of this show because there's no reason for you to miss it. There's absolutely no reason for.
Absolutely, y'all. Come on, join our text list.
And listen, and if you're on Twitter, if you've been anywhere on Twitter, you've seen this constantly. Got any good podcast recommendations? You got any podcast recommendations? Yes, I do. Q Points. If you see anybody that posts that on social media, tell them Q Points. That's my podcast recommendation. Yes, they're looking for us. That's why they keep asking. So if you see them, send them our way.
Listen, this has been amazing. Thank y'all so much for hanging out with us. This has been dope.
This has really been dope. So until next week, party people, what do I always say in this life? You have a choice. You can either pick up the needle or you can let the record play. I'm DJ Sir Daniel.
I'm J Ray, y'all.
It's been
Peace.
Q Points. We'll see you next week. All right.